I gotta tell you, I'm both excited and challenged to be talking to you today. Excited because this is such an incredibly inspiring group of people. And challenged because the thing that I want to talk to you today about took me about 10 years to fully grasp, and I only have a few minutes to convey it to you. I'm going to speak to you about a problem that I see in every organization that I work with, and virtually every individual that we engage with. It's a problem that's so pervasive, and yet it has become so normal in our culture that we don't even dare to address it anymore. I believe we're in a silent crisis. This is not a crisis that makes the headlines. That wasn't me. It's not a crisis that makes the headlines, and yet I believe it's at the root of many of our problems and of the conflicts in our world. I'm speaking about a crisis of purpose and of fulfillment. Might even call it a spiritual crisis. The first time I saw this breadth of this crisis, I was still in grad school. And during the semester holidays, I was working at Siemens, largest research facility outside of Munich. And as large research facilities typically are, this was fenced in with a huge metal fence. And there were about 8,000 to 10,000 people that were walking through big iron doors every day before they walked into this facility. And sometimes I would stand by these doors and just let these people walk by, and it seems to me that many of them lost their spark, lost their spirit, lost a part of their lives as they turned the iron door. Because it was yet another day at work. And then 8-9 hours later, when they turned the iron doors again, sure that's not me? When they turned the iron doors again, it seemed that they were too tired to check back into their lives. And so I was standing there and saying, are these people wasting their entire lives? And then it dawned to me, if I become one of them, I would end up the same way. And I said, I'd rather shoot myself. This is not going to happen. So a few years later, I founded my own software company to not fall into the same trap. And everything was working fine. We were making money. It was good.
Excuse me, this is what they call creating happiness. One more time. Okay, come on.
Awesome. 1, 2, 1, 2, all right. So I went out on my own. I founded my own software company, and everything was working really well until this one day when I was sitting in my office. Somebody at the door? I was sitting in the office and I was working on this computer system. And I had this big office with windows all around me and it was facing the Alps. And when I looked up from this computer system, I saw these Alps with Germany's highest mountain, the Zugspitze, in a stunning alpenglow. And it was so beautiful and timeless, this picture, that it completely stopped me in my track. And out of the stillness that was inside of me, there was this one question coming up. What the hell am I doing here? Is this what I really want to do with my life? And so a few months later, I sold my shares of the company, and 10 years fast forward, I ended up as a venture capitalist. And we met with hundreds of managers every year, assessing their organizations. And as I was talking to them, I made a point asking many more of them every year. I asked them, what is it that you really want to do with your life? And don't forget, these are highly empowered people. These are the CEOs of companies. And to my surprise, about 80% to 90% said, you know, Peter, I really want to do something completely different. There was this guy who was running a semiconductor company who said, you know, I really want to become a photographer and move to South America. Another guy had a beach in Kenya already picked out where he wants to open a hotel, refurbish something, and then run a bed and breakfast. And aside from the fact that I was scratching my head as an investor and said, if we invest 20, 50, $100 million into these companies sometime, maybe we are not making quite the right choices. But aside from that, it appeared to me that throughout these last 20 years of my career, there was one question that popped up from all around me. Isn't there another way to work? Isn't there a way to work where we can finally relax a little bit, where we can work with a little bit more balance and fulfillment? This is a deep pain in our society, and sometimes I see ourselves out there on this wide ocean, and we're hanging onto this piece of driftwood, and we're treading water just to keep our heads above the surface. This is a painful thing, and it drives me really mad, and sometimes I'm getting really sad when I work with these people, because if we keep pushing ahead, if we keep working more all the time, there's no way that we can live our inner spark. There's no way that we can live fully authentic. And so as a result, we can see it all around us. Stress-related illnesses are going through the roof. Depression is going through the roof. We're not happy. But there's a more fundamental problem, that if we cannot live our spark, if we cannot live fully authentic, there's always going to be this inner void inside of us. There's going to be an emptiness inside of us that we are continuing to try to fill. God. There's this emptiness inside of us that we are trying to fill. And the way we are trying to fill it is by doing more, by working harder. Do you want me to undress? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Can I just take this thing? So there's this emptiness inside of us. And how we're trying to fill it is by, again, doing more, working harder, getting another car, getting another house, hoping that this void inside of us will somehow vanish. And all along the way, we're comparing ourselves against each other. We're competing against each other, we're fighting against each other. So when I felt the same problem in my own life as a venture capitalist, I said, I want to find a solution to this problem. And I actually turned my life into an experiment. Because I left my job as a venture capitalist, I left my home country, I left my wife, I left my circle of friends, I left my entire environment back behind me and packed 2 bags basically and came to California to find a solution to this problem. And the first months were fantastic. Klaus, I see you in the audience, and I think you met me there. I was still a venture capitalist, I had a bank full of money, I had some time, it was pure freedom, the sun was shining at the time of my life. But then, 6 to 8 months later, I realized that I completely recreated the same feeling experiences I had at home, back in Germany. And I asked myself, was this experiment really such a great idea, or was I just plain stupid? And I asked further, why are we tending to recreate the same feeling experiences in our lives? And how do we create success in the first place? Not just money, but real success. And as I went down into the rabbit hole, I have to confess that I faced the most challenging years of my life because every single thing was basically stripped away from me. I wasn't a tech entrepreneur anymore, I wasn't a husband anymore, I didn't have a circle of friends, I was surely not a venture capitalist anymore. And I looked at myself in the mirror and said, what's left? And I had to say, nothing. Nobody. Peter. Can I live with that? But then about 2 years later, as I continued going down the rabbit hole, something changed. I was on a plane from New York back to Santa Barbara, and I was dozing by the plane, and there was this wake-up moment where suddenly this name, Conscious Business Institute, appeared in front of me. And I was wide awake. It was like somebody opened an ice bucket over my head. And I said, this is what I want to do with my life. Nothing else. This is it. And then things started to change eventually. Not by doing more, not by working harder, but by somehow unfolding in front of me. And today we're working with some of the largest and most well-known companies in the world. Sorry. And every time I'm standing up there working with them, I'm so deeply grateful, I'm so humbled to have been able to walk this path. Now, I'm not saying that to brag, but to share with you one of the experiences that I made along the way, and that is that the way we pursue success in our culture is fundamentally broken. It's our model of success that's making us suffer. Take a look at this. Since we are young, our culture tells us to follow a model that looks like this. We have to do more, we have to accumulate a lot of stuff, and then finally we become somebody. So we enter school, and our school teachers tell us we have to do more, we have to work harder, we have to accumulate good grades, straight A's, and eventually, if we're lucky, we become an honor student. And we do that for 10 years, and then we go to college, and we work harder on something that might not even interest us. We accumulate grades, maybe a master's degree, a PhD, and then we become a doctor, businessman, or a lawyer. And then we continue, we go into our businesses, And then we work harder, we push more, we accumulate some money, we get a car, we get a house, we get a boat, and eventually we become important, powerful, or respectable. Maybe even somebody names a building after us in our hometown. But what you can see is that this model, to do more, accumulate more, and become, doesn't leave any room for what we really seek for in life. There's no room for balance, fulfillment, for peace of mind, for the genuine connections that we're all seeing. And all along, what we are trying to do is to work harder, get another degree, maybe become a venture capitalist, thinking that somehow this will make us happy. But think about it for yourself. What really has meaning for you? When is the last time your boss came up to you and looked you straight into the eyes and saw you for who you are, recognized you for the individual you are, not for what he wanted you to be? When did you turn around to your employees, maybe to your children, and look them straight into the eyes and say, I recognize you, not for who I want you to be, but for who you are? So the question that I was asking myself is, if this success model is so strugglesome, why do we continue to pursuing it in our culture? And the reason why we pursued, I found, is that there's an underlying driver, an underlying mechanism that causes many of our behaviors and actions. And this underlying mechanism I call the model of dominance and subservience. And you can see all around us in our culture that this model of dominance and subservience runs a lot of our businesses, our governments, and oftentimes even our private relationships. And it is based on scarcity. It's a fear-based model where we hold a fundamental belief that there's not enough money, that there's not enough time, that there's not enough love or support. And as a result, what we do is we spend a lot of time in our lives and a lot of energy. It's really exhausting to try to secure these kind of resources. And in our culture, it's a lot about money. So what you can see is that if you want to understand how this model works in our own lives, we have to grasp that it is run by basically three principles. The first principle is that I have to dominate the scarce resources or I will be dominated. So take a look at how we deal with oil, for example. We consider it a scarce resource, so we do everything to dominate that resource, even if it means that we have to kill people over it. The second principle is that if I cannot dominate the scarce resources, I have to be subservient to a dominator. So think about the finance crisis a couple of years ago, and jobs were a scarcity. And if you are afraid of losing your jobs, you might be a little bit nicer to your boss so he doesn't fire you, so you get into a kind of subservient mindset. That's the second principle. And the third one really drives it home for me, because this is the reason why we cannot live our spark at work oftentimes. And it is we have to sacrifice our authenticity so that the dominator will take care of us if we cannot take care of ourselves anymore. So if we are afraid that we are losing our jobs, that we are losing our paycheck and we cannot support ourselves or our families anymore, what we do is we sacrifice our authenticity. We don't show up fully anymore. We don't speak up. We don't tell our truth. And we've all experienced it in meetings where we say, oh, I better shut up about that because I might get fired. So if you're running your own organization and you find that some of your people aren't fully engaged, or that you might think that you're not getting the full message from them, the truth, you know that the model of dominance and subservience is somewhere in there. If you are driving down the road with your spouse to visit a friend and your spouse said, honey, we should have turned left here, and you said, no, we have to go straight. If it's about being right, you know that the model of dominance and subservience governs your thinking somehow. So I'm not saying that we can't have an opinion or that we can't be ambitious and get something done in life. That's not what I'm saying, because if we get a job on Wall Street, sure, we want to go ahead. We want to make some money. We want to grow. It's normal. But there's a place where it becomes cancerous, which you can see in the financial crisis, where our actions turn from contribution to dominance. And they don't originate in our core, in our soul anymore, but come from our egos. So the point that I'm making, as long as this model governs our choices, there's no way that we can live our spark fully, because there's always be something missing. There's always something that we want more of. So to conclude, if we want to change the trajectory we're on, the growing struggles, frustration, crisis in our culture, is it enough to look only at the outside circumstances? Maybe fiscal reforms, government policies, maybe changing to renewable energies even. I believe we have to go look a level deeper. We have to look at this model, how it governs our choices. Because for centuries, this model has been the blueprint for our behaviors, for our actions. And if we don't change the blueprint, we cannot expect the results to change. Now, unfortunately, I'm not here to give you a solution. By the way, I think there is no one-size-fits-all Harvard Business School solution to this problem. But my experience is, as we become aware and conscious about this model, how it governs our own lives, the lives around us, things will change within us and within the people right outside of us. And then maybe we can consider a different success model, which looks something like this, where we are authentically who we are. Again, it doesn't mean just follow your bliss and everything will be fine. I think that's a new age BS and it doesn't work. It's more about knowing who we are, knowing our gifts and talents, but even deeper to know our emotional system, how we call it, the deeper drivers for our behaviors and for our actions. And then from this different perspective, from this different mindset, we can do more of what our gifts inspire, where we find the flow. Maybe not 100% tomorrow, but a step more every day. And then as we focus on this process rather than on the outcome all the time, we'll find that we can create a work environment that fulfills us more, that's more meaningful for us. And if we're still considered about the money, I would suggest that you find one person on this planet that lives by this model successfully. For me, this was Yvonne Chouinard of Patagonia, for example. I mentioned to you earlier that I sometimes see us out there on this wide ocean, and we are holding on to this piece of driftwood, and we're treading water just to keep our heads above the surface. It's getting very busy and very, very exhausting. When I engaged in this experiment 9 years back, I had the opportunity to let go, and I realized that I did not drown. I even had the opportunity to sit on the beach nearby and relax a little bit and observe what's happening out here. And all I'm here to say, it's okay. It's okay to let go. It's worth it. I've had the experience that we can work in a different way. We can build organizations in a different way where we're truly fulfilled and where we're making money along the way. And I think that's an idea worth spreading. Thank you.